Welcome back to Impulse, the podcast that sparks inspiration and innovation in the world of venture building, startups, and tech trends. My name is Nils Wagner, and today we flip the script a little bit. I will step out from behind the curtain as the host of this podcast and share my experiences in founding and venture building and all things entrepreneurial with my esteemed colleague, Lydia Haupt. So she will be taking us through my history from early days of venture building to also my time abroad and my recent experiences with Rehau New Ventures. So look forward to being the one to answer questions this time. It was a great session, and Lydia, who I know now for quite a few years, I think led us quite well through the different topics along my journey. So without further ado, let's get into the talk with Lydia Haupt.
You just came back from a little holiday, right?
I came back from the mountains. I spent some time in the mountains here in Switzerland. Switzerland is the country where I was born. So Swiss people grew up with proximity to the mountains. So skiing definitely plays an important role in my life. And that's what I was able to do. Luckily, we had tons of snow, even though the average temperatures were far too high for this time of year. So I think, taking every year with good snow as it comes, not knowing if we'll be skiing in 10, 20, or 30 years down the road here in Switzerland.
Yeah, welcome to the climate change. So you already put a pin on the map, so to speak, in Switzerland. So you were born there. If I were to put a few more pins on the map in terms of your life, they would be, next to Switzerland in the US, back in Switzerland, actually, in Zurich, then in China. Maybe if we just connect the pins on the map, maybe you can guide us a little bit through your life.
So I was born in Bern, Switzerland. Bern is the quaint capital of our small country. And then at the age of 7, I moved to the US with my family. So I spent my childhood and formative years in the US on the East Coast near Washington, D.C. Came back to Switzerland for high school. And then after high school, decided to study architecture at the ETH in Zurich. So that's then what brought me to Zurich. After I got my degree in architecture, I decided to join Rehau, the Rehau Group, our family business, and basically started in a sales role here in Switzerland. So really, learned the business from ground up. And then after a few years, I had the opportunity to go abroad. So, being very familiar with the Western Hemisphere, I had actually only one request. I wanted to go east. And ultimately, then there was a opening for a sales director role in China, and I happily accepted after consulting with my wife, of course. And from 2012 onwards, we moved to China. So myself, my wife, and at that time, our 3-year-old son, we lived in Shanghai, and I was able to take on several roles in quite quick succession, ending then my stint in China as co-CEO for Asia Pacific. After that, I moved back to Switzerland with my family and was able to take over the responsibility for Rehau New Ventures, which is basically the host of this podcast that you're listening to. Maybe we can get to that a little bit later. So I've spent many years in different parts of the world, and I think that's definitely something that kind of informs my person. The international experience, and I think kind of global outlook on all things.
Where are you today?
So right now I'm in Zurich.
Here we go.
In Zurich, I'm at home. I'm in my home office. I spend a significant amount of time in home office if I'm not visiting our teams, which are also again spread out across the globe.
Yeah. Before we dive into Rehau and try to explain who is Rehau, I just wanted to go quickly back to your studies when you came back to Switzerland, or you started studying in Zurich. Why architecture?
Architecture was a passion of mine. After high school, I actually founded my own company. It was important for me to really stand on my own financial footing. But then I decided that I did want to go back to school, to university, and architecture, design, and the arts in a broader sense were always something that interested me. And so I really followed that out of a deep-rooted passion. And actually later when I started then my professional career, I realized that the education being very broad and very interdisciplinary was actually quite suitable for the kind of problem-solving tasks that I was faced with on a day-to-day level. So yeah, that happened to be a good basis to do all kinds of things. Ultimately, bringing people with different skills together to pursue one goal, one target. That's what you have to do as an architect, and that's what I have to do almost every day in my various roles.
Yeah. You just mentioned you found your own company back then. What was that?
Well, actually, myself and my co-founder were very passionate about graphic design, and at the time in the 90s, with the internet coming up, designing web pages was a focus of ours, or basically kind of what we wanted to get into. But it proved to be difficult to sustain a living based on that, and so I started importing different friend products from the U.S. Actually, believe it or not, the first product I imported was a hair wax product from the U.S. And so I started distributing that to local barbershops in Switzerland. And I think that kind of mix between very creative discipline, graphic and web design, and a kind of commercial trading business is also something that informed me. So I was always interested in commerce and just entrepreneurial activities. Besides, let's say, the kind of passion for creation. Yeah.
Interesting. So the entrepreneurial spirit is in your blood.
In my genes, it seems.
In
yes.
your genes, exactly. That actually gives us or builds a good bridge over to who's Rehau. Because Rehau, the company we're talking about, was founded in 1948 by your grandfather, with only 3 people, and nowadays it's a global company, a global corporation. So maybe you can, like, with your own words, tell us who's Rehau, what kind of products, what's the industry, and what's your stake in the whole thing?
Well, like you said, my grandfather founded the company back in 1948 as a very young man, actually. So he had to join the army towards the end of World War II. As a very young man, luckily he survived, was able to come back home, and then unfortunately was not able to study at university because everything was destroyed. And so he decided to travel from the city of Nuremberg, where he was living, to the small town of Rehau, which was at that time a 2-day bike ride. And so that's what he did, because his mother still owned a stake in a leather factory that actually her father had co-founded with other local entrepreneurs in the very small town of Rehau in the kind of northeastern corner of Bavaria. And he went there and had pretty much ceased to run. And he started picking up the pieces and making that leather factory run again. On the one side, production was ramped up. On the other side, of course, customer relations were established. And within a few months, kind of in the destroyed country of Germany, demand started picking up and things began humming. He was then introduced to a new technology, polymers or plastics, through his contacts in the chemical industry, because for curing leather, you're constantly dealing with certain chemicals. And through his various trips to suppliers, he was then at one point introduced to this new technology, and he immediately saw the potential in it. He had to borrow money from a local family to then start buying the equipment that was necessary to process polymers or plastics. And after an initial success, he basically founded a new company. Today, one would call that a spin-off. So Rehau, the polymer manufacturer, was a spin-off from a leather factory business. And that's then what grew over many years to a global company with over 20,000 employees. We have footprints in different industries, in the automotive industry, in the construction industry, in the interior industry, as well as medical components and raw material trading. So quite a broad and diverse footprint with a global scope.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's Rehau today.
Fascinating. So the overall bracket is polymers. It's the material.
Yes, that's where we come from. Yeah.
Yeah. So you said when in the early in the beginning, when we were like pinning your locations, your life locations on the map, you said you started in sales in Switzerland and then you moved to China. So what's your like career path in the company?
Well, like I said, I started in sales, and that for me was important. Not coming from a strict business background, not coming from an engineering background. For me, it was just important to get to know the customers. And that's something that always had interested me, that kind of relationship building between a supplier and the customer. It came natural to me in a certain degree. That's what interested me. And I was ultimately in a sales director role as I moved to China. And I think in China, kind of a whole new dimension started to become important, because, our business in China and in Asia was still relatively young. So there was a lot of company building that had to be done there. And, I kind of transitioned from a sales role to really, kind of the role of an entrepreneur, and ultimately as a CEO, being responsible for building an organization, not only making sure that we have the right talent in the organization, but also making sure that we have the right mindset and culture in the organization. Ultimately, and I think this is something that's not necessarily disputed these days. Culture eats strategy, meaning you can define, the most refined strategy for an organization. If you don't implement or build a certain culture that's able to implement the strategy, you will simply lose. So that for me was very formative and important to really learn firsthand what it means to do that. That brought me maybe a little bit back to the roots of Rehau. As I said, Rehau started as a small company, so it was then built subsequently over decades by numerous people, and it was informed by a very specific company culture. And so, we had to build that in the context of China, in the context of Asia. And the other thing that informed me was the understanding that you had to adapt your products and services to local market demands. You had to, develop or adapt your go-to-market strategy. And you also had to keep an eye out for opportunities that different markets offered. So, we weren't able to just copy paste the successful business models from Germany or for Europe to these new markets. We really had to develop them, rethink them, and there was a lot of kind of creation or innovation necessary to really be successful in the market.
Maybe we can do a little deep dive here. As far as I remember, you were in sales in Switzerland when you started for the furniture solutions business, right?
Yeah.
So comparing Switzerland to China in the business, and you were just explaining that we needed to adapt, or we need to still adapt business ideas and products, processes to local markets. Maybe you can give us an example. What's the furniture solutions business like in China compared to Switzerland?
Well, Switzerland is a small country, but it still has a very strong manufacturing base. And so the, industrial furniture manufacturers in Switzerland are serving a market that's very demanding in terms of quality. So really being able to meet high quality expectations as well as offering a very high service level is key to customers in Switzerland. At the same time, it's business here, and I think actually at the end of the day, it's like that everywhere you go. It is relationship driven. So besides having impeccable quality and service, you do need to maintain those customer relationships, and in a sense, those basic ingredients are also important in a market like China. So being a foreign manufacturer, we of course need to excel in the areas of quality. We need to also show that we have, in terms of our technology, always a really cutting edge product. We have to offer best in class service, but also we have to maintain those relationships. Actually, in the Asian culture, that probably plays a bit more of a role than in some Western cultures or Western countries, Western markets. But what we learned is that there's a completely different industry. China being an emerging market, the way the industry developed and the kind of business models that our customers developed really required us to rethink our product and service offering. And so we started to develop new approaches to the market. We started to think a lot more also in terms of forward integration, and we're just able to create a different value proposition than we would be able to do in more mature markets. So look, I think generally there's certain core ingredients to our business model that are valid all over the world, but you just always have to rethink that based on the local context, and not just try to blindly replicate. This will definitely not be successful. And in order to do that properly, it's really important to then get the local talent. So to kind of bring maybe a certain mindset that's very Western informed, that's very much infused by German engineering, and marrying that to the local mindset, the local knowledge, the local understanding of market conditions. I think that's a very important a process and a key success factor, and that just requires a certain openness in terms of cultural understanding to be able to bring those different aspects together successfully, to be able to marry those different success factors successfully.
Interesting. What was it like to move to Shanghai with a 3-year-old? I mean, this like cultural adaptability was also on your personal side a big challenge, I guess, right?
Well, I mean, it led to a situation where our son's Chinese was definitely better than his high German. At home, we speak a Swiss German dialect, so that
Yeah.
I think worked out well. But our son quickly was extremely fluent in Chinese, and then also learned English. And I also learned that at a more advanced age, it's definitely difficult to learn Chinese, or at least takes a huge amount of time and effort to become really fluent. So that was definitely a challenge, just navigating in a country or a culture that where communication is not intuitive, is not as easy directly, and then figuring out ways to still be able to communicate, to get messages across. That was definitely something that you had to get used to. But again, having and building a good local team on the ground really helps to sort that out. Besides that, it was fantastic. I mean, Shanghai is a great city. China was and still is a absolutely fascinating place to be. It's
Good food.
just the food is definitely amazing. Something we miss to this day.
Yeah.
So no, it was fascinating to be in the middle of a country that was going through such a groundbreaking change and evolution, and that was very enriching.
Yeah. When did you come back again? It was
Early 2020, just before the
yeah,
pandemic.
just before the pandemic, right? Yeah.
By sheer
you.
coincidence.
Yeah.
By sheer coincidence. Right.
Yeah, and that was also the time when you became the CEO of New Ventures, or you built up, created New Ventures.
Yeah.
Maybe you can explain a little bit who and what is New Ventures.
Well, I think the roots for Rehau New Ventures go back a few years before I actually took over the reins. I think in 2017, this was a time when the whole world was talking about digital disruption. The kind of potential for technological disruption had really reached all corners of the world and of all industries, even traditional manufacturing industries. We're talking about nightmare competitors and disruption on a large scale, and so it was clear that we needed to kind of gear up in terms of certain competencies. So business model innovation and digitization were kind of desperately lacking with the organization, and one initiative then brought to life two such units. So a business model innovation unit or innovation lab was formed, as well as a digitization team was kind of brought to life. It quickly also became evident that it was just difficult to get traction. I think the idea was that we just need to bring this kind of talent, these kind of skills into the organization, and the rest will then kind of fall into place. There will be kind of a cross-pollination or infusion of new approaches, and then the core business, which of course was in many parts of the world quite mature, would just kind of take this on, and that would help it to evolve and to then meet some of these challenges, etc. And that was just really, really difficult. It wasn't really gaining traction. A mature organization actually does not readily accept new ideas, is not per se open to new ideas. Actually, especially in mature businesses, the organization is really honed to risk mitigation. And so actually, new approaches, new ideas face huge hurdles and a lot of resistance on many levels. And so we had to kind of regroup, and that's where I came in. So we had to, change not only the whole setup and in parts also the team members, we really had to redefine the strategy. So what we did was then build a corporate company builder, which basically had the objective to identify new potential businesses that were adjacent to our core business. So in areas where we had good market insights, where we had good networks into these markets, but then really go hunting for new business opportunities that were not so much based on the traditional manufacturing business model, but more based on an asset-light, digitally driven, potentially even a software-based business model. And that's what we've now been doing for the last 3.5, 4 years, is identifying these opportunities and then building new companies that then have the aim to really raise these opportunities and build it into a fruitful business.
Yeah. So you mentioned you started as an innovation lab, an internal innovation lab, and nowadays you're like an independent subgroup in the Rehau group. Why was that step important to become independent?
Well, I think, again, the core business is, first of all, maybe more focused on short to midterm goals and targets. So, in some mature businesses, it's really about just successfully implementing the next incremental innovation, continuous improvement, small tweaks here, small tweaks there, and is, on the other hand, not then willing to take on big risks in terms of, trying to set up a completely new business model. Plus, there's always this competition for resources, and ultimately investments into existing business where you have a very clear visibility on payback is then often preferred, instead of, kind of making a big wager, a big gamble on something where you might see potential, but you just don't know if you'll be able to execute successfully. So that's why these kind of, a bit more radical, far-reaching innovations have a really hard time in a corporate setting, in a large organization. And so we decided to really, let's say, create a space that offered the necessary requirements for such more far-reaching innovations, completely new business models to thrive. And so that's why it was important to really create a vessel. And that vessel today is Rehau New Ventures. We offer the ecosystem where such new businesses can be built successfully. And, if they're relevant to the core business, maybe they will find a home within the Rehau group. If they thrive, but, kind of have their own strategic trajectory, we're then also willing to further grow these businesses with external investors and ultimately also part ways with these businesses, meaning selling them to outside investors or other stakeholders.
Yeah. So as a fresh talent, just, I don't know, leaving university, why is it interesting or why should it be interesting for me to work for New Ventures compared to a completely independent startup? Because, I mean, you have you connect both worlds, right? You're part of a large organization with 75, I think, Rehau is celebrating 75-year anniversary this year. So long history, big organization, heaps of processes, rules and procedures, etc. And then there's this tiny, fresh, radical group in the whole thing, going for new innovations, new business models, what you just described. What, however, is competing with young startups in the market. What's the interesting thing about something like New Ventures?
Well, I mean, the myth of the young startup entrepreneurs straight out of university is, of course, a persistent one. And there's some, very well-known examples for that. Steve Jobs never even completed college, I think Mark Zuckerberg also discontinued college to focus fully on, building Facebook. But maybe these are also a little bit outliers. You often have, especially in the startup ecosystem, entrepreneurs who have been around the block a few times, who have developed a certain insight into a market or a certain skill set in terms of technology over time, and have often had many or several at least tries at building a company, and definitely not succeeding the first time, but maybe it takes second, third, or fourth approach to then really kind of make something stick. And I think that's maybe your more typical example for a startup entrepreneur, and those are that's maybe the kind of people that we're looking for. So we definitely have intern programs for students or university graduates, and we work with a lot of young people. But ultimately, our kind of proposition to potential entrepreneurs is that we have great access to very interesting markets, and we have a strong corporate backing, and so we kind of offer ideal conditions for someone with entrepreneurial experience and entrepreneurial ambition to really make a startup stick. So that's our value proposition, and there will always be people who say, look, I want to be completely independent. I want to build my company on my own. And there's definitely also people that find this kind of setup interesting just because it takes some of the friction, it takes some of the pain out of this early founding process. So that's what we can offer to aspirational entrepreneurs.
So maybe, you're using this terminology, entrepreneurial spirit, mindset a lot. What does that mean for you? And what did you maybe also took over from your grandfather?
My grandfather was, very much an entrepreneur. I think the whole topic of entrepreneurial mindset of what it means to take on responsibility, and not only making sure that a business can thrive, but also that you are a responsible employer. I mean, those are very much values that he infused into our organization. I think there's a lot of that I kind of picked up on from an early age. And again, my grandfather, was a young man when he founded Rehau. He was 23 years old. He also did not have the chance to complete a university education. So he was, one of these exceptions where someone really, had the right instinct, the right understanding of a new technology, of a nascent technology, and was then also at the right time and right place to make that happen. So I think our roots as an organization very much go back to this entrepreneurial spirit. And that's definitely something that impacted and influenced me over the course of my life. And so I was very fortunate to have a role model like him. And that's definitely something that, I try to instill into our organization and to Rehau New Ventures, and hopefully find back to those entrepreneurial roots. Like I said, large organizations, sometimes have trouble reinventing themselves. They are maybe inert to a certain degree. They are resistant to innovation, resistant to change. And so that's definitely something where we as a small unit want to go back to the entrepreneurial roots and really try to define or find new opportunities that will define the future for the group going forward.
Can you be a bit more precise in terms of those opportunities? What kind of opportunities are you talking about? And where do you already have some successes? success stories?
We Rehau, we serve the construction industry in kind of many parts of the world, and not just construction, but then also the interior industry. So everything that is related to the place where we live and work. We have a lot of let's say impact in these areas, and so those are kind of our search fields where we say, look, we have access to these industries. We know a lot about the construction industry, but we also know a lot about the place of living, the place of working, and that's where we then go looking for opportunities to have a positive impact. Generally, we see that the construction industry is still a relatively analog industry. It's still working in quite traditional ways, so we believe there's a lot of potential for digital disruption there. So there's an example of a company that we're building right now, which focuses on kitchen and bathroom renovation in the U.S. market. This is a huge industry. Billions of dollars every year are spent by homeowners on improving their bathrooms and their kitchens, but it's a very painful process. It's just an industry that has grown over many years, and to some degrees it's broken in terms of a customer experience. So usually for homeowners, to navigate through such a renovation job, it's a nightmare. And here we have decided to build tools that help make this process more smooth. So we offer AI-powered software for these decoration companies that allows them to collaborate with their customers, allows them to design these future bathrooms and kitchens in a collaborative way, but then also helps them streamline the different processes. So not just the design work, but then also the quotation, as well as then, the whole site and project management is supported by digital and AI-powered tools, with the ultimate goal to make that whole customer journey a lot easier and a lot more pleasant for all parties involved. So that's just an example of, we have access to these industries. We supply a lot of plumbing products, a lot of furniture components to these renovation industries, but we're really looking at it now from a different side. We're looking at it from a customer perspective, from a homeowner perspective, and then we're trying to come up with a digital tool that facilitates the whole experience. And this kind of approach, meaning we see an interesting industry, we start to understand the pain points, and then we start to build solutions that address these pain points. That's in a nutshell what we do every day, and we have different examples in different markets. We have projects not only in the US, we have them in Europe, and we also have them in Asia, namely China.
Yeah. So the bathroom renovation tool, is that being launched in Europe as well? I would be interested.
No. Actually, yes. I mean, that industry also could be improved
it is also
in Europe.
painful here, exactly.
Exactly. Also in Switzerland, I even hear stories of people being frustrated by something like a bathroom renovation. But look, for now, we're launching this in the US. We need to make sure that the business works in the US. And like I said before, you might find similar pain points in other markets, but you will probably need a different kind of approach. So let's see, maybe there are elements that we can take, but then we definitely need to just revisit the whole go-to-market strategy, and we need to have a deep understanding of the specific market situations. You'll find significant differences between markets like Switzerland and Germany when it comes to something like a bathroom renovation. And so you need to be able to consider these differences in your business model and in your go-to-market approach.
But where do the ideas come from? From like your team, or in the end from the other businesses in the Rehau group? How does that work?
It depends. I mean, we're definitely in contact and exchange with our colleagues from the core businesses, and sometimes they have insights or ideas that they share with us. and sometimes we really just kind of go out on our own, and go hunting for this kind of potential. So there's both sides to trying to come up with these kind of new ideas. Ultimately, though, what is important is not as much where the idea comes from, but how we successfully implement it. And here, it's key to then have the right entrepreneurs on the ground. We need the strong, capable people who are able to do the translation from an idea to a actually running business. Sometimes there's this conception that all you need is a good idea. Well, that's definitely the starting point, but the real work begins when you want to bring this idea to life. That's if you wanted to quantify it, that's probably where 98% of the work then lies, is really making that idea come to life. And so that's what we need the right people for. And so people in our business are absolutely key.
Yeah. So this 75-year anniversary I already mentioned, one of the headlines I've seen on the website is 75 years of visionary power. What's your vision for new ventures for the next 75 years?
Good God. I mean, 75 years is daunting enough. Many lifetimes have been invested into bringing us to where we are, many more than I can even count. It's been a huge collective effort, definitely initiated by my grandfather, but then, many people have had a significant impact. And so, to try and extrapolate that into the future for the next 75 years is daunting. But what definitely, my ambition is that we can hopefully plant a few seeds that will shape or help shape the next 75 years. So if we're able to, successfully build now these nascent businesses, and we're able to successfully hold on to them and cultivate them and develop them, that we will have then for future generations of Rehau employees opportunities that will help to sustain us as a group. I think to imagine a world in 75 years from today's perspective is almost completely impossible. If we look at how quickly things are changing, not just from a technology perspective, but geopolitical climate, who knows what. I think, anybody's guess as to where we stand in 75 years is good enough. But what we do need to do is look at the challenges that we face and to try and come up with new answers, with new solutions, with new approaches to have a positive impact on people's lives with what we do. And I think that's very much, the root of Rehau. I think my grandfather understood that with this new technology, with these new materials, you could simply make life easier. You could create better products. You could make your customers happier. You could have a positive impact on their production process. So, I think that's still what's driving us today is finding those areas where we can just simply have a positive impact, where we can, enhance people's lives. That's what's driving us. But to understand that, in a changing world, you need to continuously look for those opportunities. I think that's important. And if we just keep doing that, and if we don't, lose that part of our DNA, then I think, we'll be able to continuously evolve as a group, as a organization, and will continue to be relevant. It's if you lose your curiosity, if you lose the ability to look for new opportunities and to be open for new ways of doing things, that's when you set yourself up for failure on the long run. That's when you run the risk of becoming irrelevant further down the road.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. So, okay, if the 75 years, looking into the next 75 years is impossible, we said, let's take the next 75 hours. What's your plan for the next 75 hours? And how do you stay curious? How do you stay inspired and curious?
Well, in the next 75 hours, definitely I'll be having a weekly meeting with my management team. We just have a weekly exchange where we try to go through all the topics from the different parts of the organizations that are relevant. I'll definitely be having some sessions with some of our co-founder teams who are running these different startups. And here, my role is more as a kind of a mentor. We have strong co-founders and business owners who know what they're doing, but to offer some guidance to go into some sparring. I think that's my role there. And then I'll also be actually visiting a supplier for one of our projects, a new supplier. So really, trying to get on the ground and understanding, in this case, new hardware components that we're integrating into some of our products. So we don't only deal with software; we also have some hardware products. That's also on my plate for the next 75 hours. So I'm happy to have a very diverse set of topics on my table every day.
Yeah. Sounds interesting.
From more management related roles to sometimes quite hands-on, very market oriented roles. And look, to stay curious, again, it's a certain openness that you need, and just that continuous curiosity to understand what's driving people and to try and come up with a better solution. I think that's kind of the mindset, at least, that I try to maintain to stay curious.
Nice. And this is the core idea, I guess, also from this podcast, right?
Yes, we try and talk with people who are driven in a similar way, trying to have an impact, trying to do things better. People who kind of live and breathe entrepreneurialism, but also people who are dealing with this question of corporate innovation. Again, how to keep large organizations nimble, how to keep them, from becoming too static. That's something that, most large organizations are also dealing with. So we're not alone in this discipline. Over the last years, many large organizations have started to set up similar units, and we're also in close exchange with them. So kind of that exchange from peer to peer. Yeah. That's super important, and also, keeps us motivated to see that, we're all dealing with similar challenges at the end of the day, and we're not alone in this, let's say, in this fight for innovation, for corporate innovation.
Yeah, true. Nice. Thanks a lot, Nils.
This concludes another insightful episode of Impulse. We hope you found today's conversation both insightful and inspiring. And if you enjoyed today's episode and would like to dive even deeper into the world of venture building, startups, and tech trends, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. Until next time, stay curious, stay ambitious, and always trust your impulses. This is Nils Wagner saying goodbye to Impulse.